All right, let's talk about some Performabuilt transmissions. I can't wait to have Ryan on here. This is going to be a blast, dude. He is so smart.
Yep. Performabuilt is the official transmission builder of Drag Drive Repeat. At Performabuilt Transmissions, their goal is to engineer and build the toughest transmissions on the planet. Performabuilt doesn't just rebuild transmissions, they systematically re engineer each model to eliminate OEM flaws and to achieve the highest levels of performance. That's why they say their transmissions are not just built, they are performabuilt.
I know that's right. Well, let's bring Mr. Ryan Snyder in here, owner operator of Performabuilt Transmissions. Dude, how are you today? What is going on? And let's get into this stuff, man.
I'm good. I'm very exhausted. It's been a hard, long time with we put out 3 orders, 3 come in. It's just been that way for a year, over a year. So I am beat. So I decided to do this at home today. And first of all, congratulations, Chuck. That drag strip makes me want to have a picnic with the Price family. That is absolutely beautiful, dude. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. Think about that. Like, how cool is it that they're going to have like not just parts, but also be like a build shop on site with the drag strip? But man, that's just one of the coolest things I think that can happen.
Yeah,
It truly
I was already thinking at Byron, like where is there a corner that I can reach out and be like, hey, we need to do that same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Chuck sounds like he's got this figured out, and even having like an all-wheel drive dyno on, that's unheard of. Like,
Yeah.
just having it there. Yeah, man. Let's. I want to talk about a little 4L80 today.
Yes.
I know that's not normal for me, but I'm getting kind of bored with the 60. Broke the record and all. We're doing some stuff to it. I got something to show you guys here and there with the new machine. We talk about the new machine, talk about some shop, talk about Matt there on screen. We got a lot to talk about tonight.
Yeah, well, let's get into it, dude. One thing that's really fun for me to watch y'all stuff is like obviously transmissions. I say it all the time when you're on here, it's voodoo magic, man. Like people don't understand what goes on in there, but you guys have a pretty good understanding of that stuff.
It is, and it doesn't have to be hard. I like to think of it divided in 2 parts. Okay, you got your like turbo 400, 350 mechanical transmissions, right? And then you got your 4L60, 4L80 electronic, all the way up to the 10L. And they're just 2 totally different animals. And I don't think we learned enough about this, and we learned plenty about this, but there's so much to the tuning and how we do the shift kits and everything over here than it is over there, because you don't have a computer. That's the biggest difference.
Mhm. Right. So
Um,
when you're talking about tuning, like walk us through what that means. Like, are you softening up the shifts? Like, what are things that you can do to help a 60 or an 80 live?
okay, so I was actually going to save this to the end, but we'll get right into it. One of the things I was going to talk about was how one of my favorite channels, and the guy who actually taught me this, his name is Matt Sanford. He just YouTube Matt Sanford. It's a great tuning if you want to understand anything about it. Anyway, he kind of wrapped it all up for me in my, quest for knowledge. And the 60 and the 80, like we're going to talk about tonight, they're both torque based. It's the same animal, and torque basically comes from airflow. Okay, if you're and people lost their mind when I said the MAF sensor screws up your transmission on the internet. Nobody believes that. But if your injector flow, your MAF, your VE tables are incorrect, all those things and shift pressure translates to milliamps. And that's how it reads it. So if those things are wrong, especially the MAF, that's really messing up how everything's calculating torque, and therefore it's messing up your pressure, and then you fry 3-4, and then you get really upset. So
Interesting. Okay.
a lot in the engine. So when you're dealing with the turbo 400 and stuff, you have to worry about one vacuum line. If you got a hole in it, that's your problem. That's it.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it is the tranny's fault. The electronic stuff, You have so much input, like your engine. You know, every motor head in the world understands they have 14 gauges that tell them what they do. We got oil, water, this, that. We never have a PSI gauge, and we hardly ever have a temp gauge. And those are the only two things you need with a tranny. And the more you understand it and how it correlates to what the engine's seeing, like throttle position, MAF, how the VE tables are correcting what's actually happening at the mass airflow sensor, and the types of tuning you do. So, I still got
You're
everybody?
over my head, but I love it. I'm picking,
All right.
it up as we're
We're just
going.
gonna keep rolling. We'll throw one example out, and I'm gonna kill it. Let's say we got like a simple turbo truck. Everybody's got a 5.3. So you do like half your injector flow rate to get more resolution cylinder air mass. Okay, you want more air in your fucking cylinder. When you have those tables, you have to go back and have it in the transmission side too. Otherwise, it's going to calculate the totally wrong thing. Even though your engine's running good, this is running like shit. And it's going to slip, burn, break shit, you know, however you've done it with your tables.
Interesting. Okay.
That's how touchy it is. We know everything about engines. We know how to tune them. We know turbos, spark, retard, advance, this, that. All of that eventually correlates to pressure. And if you guys got a misfire or your VE isn't correcting it right and you get like a boost spike or something, it's going to go down the train and cause, you know, a variance in the transmission that it's not going to like. And then on top of that, an engine's steel. It can take some shit. Transmission's paper. You got a couple shots before it's just wiped. Not long.
That's an interesting way to put it. And so that's, I would think, probably why a lot of folks go 400, because it's just going to do what you tell it to. Like it's hey, shift at this point and all that kind of stuff. But when you're talking like 80s and stuff and 4L60s, like it's an entirely new tuning learning process.
It is. And you kind of, the average person doesn't have to understand a lot. Really, what I could tell the average guy is put a PSI gauge in your car, put a temp gauge in your car, and then do your best just to make sure the engine is working the right way and not just full sending with a problem. That's about it. Make sure your map's clean, make sure your throttle positions, you didn't just put it on and not clock it right. Stupid things like that.
Yeah, Jay here is saying, from JY, he's saying most aftermarket computers don't have a MAF, running lots of pressure commands based on TPS and map.
Yes, and that's why I like those. And I'm a huge fan of US Shift, Haltech, and Holley. And a US Shift, especially for the carbureted guys, because it basically calculates off of throttle position and output speed and a couple ratios. I do deal with a lot of guys with HP tuners more than I care for, which is why I really bring this up, because stock computers where this stuff gets real complicated. If you guys spend the money and get a Holley, which is like the Fisher Price of tuning, it will save you so much money and time. Like, it is worth it in every way. And if something does go wrong with your engine, half the time the transmission's kind of separated, so it's just going to be fine most of the time.
Interesting. But if you don't get the shifting stuff right and don't get the front end stuff right with like a, not necessarily just saying HP tuners, but with a person that's tuning it that may not know what they're doing as well, then, now you've got an engine and transmission.
Yeah, exactly. I've had people blow up both before.
Man,
really,
talk about a bad day.
Yeah, one got bad because it started with a number 7 misfire, and he kept going, and eventually everything collapsed at that point.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So
right. Well, let's
It,
talk 80 stuff, dude, because you've been on. We've talked about 4L60 stuff in the past, and kind of some of the tips. I mean, if everybody will remember, you actually tore a 4L60 down live on the news one morning that belonged to Howie Price and their wagon. So that was kind of cool
Yeah.
to go through 5,500 pound car, drag and drive, goes fast, and you did that right there in front of us. That was pretty neat.
And I was surprised myself. That thing really held up fine. It kind of did what I thought it would. And I even tore down Nick's recently. I'm sure you guys saw his brake launch in third. Yeah,
Hmm.
that wasn't bad either. And I've made fun of him enough for being, father time and not seeing it. But his is on the way back. The prices, speaking of them, I'm really excited to get out there and see the new twin turbo build.
Oh man,
yes.
yeah.
Which, in my opinion, at this point, I'm not sure we should be running a 60, but we're going to try it.
I mean, here's the thing: like, if it does not survive, a guy that
Mhm.
can put a 400 together, or go to an 80 or something like that if you need more. If you want to keep the overdrive and you know electronic stuff.
So I'm bringing that up. Talk about the machine before I get to the 80 because that's some
Yeah.
stuff. I do have like other things I can do to Howie's still that I've never really tried, but I want to. Um, just a little spoiler, and I won't say what it is, but this goes in a transmission, and it's something we just made, and that will do it. I guarantee that. So
Interesting.
as
And
a last
that's what the new machine's for. Like,
yeah, this is a piece of another piece that we're still working on, but basically we're going to make something in there very unbreakable that usually breaks under a lot of weight.
Interesting.
yeah, I like where this is going.
Right.
But on top of that, on top of new stuff, which is few and far, we got to do a lot of R&D. I'm making just some stuff to like stuff doesn't exist anymore. Um, you know, I don't realize it because I'm 35, but the 60's been out as long as I've been alive. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, I'm old. I feel like shit. So this
Just
thing
like
is too, and it's sitting outside and I'm not. So all the
Yep.
like the shift shafts, for example, these things, um, we're trying to make parts like this because you just can't get them anymore. And I'm not trying to sell people junk. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Your linkage, your switch slides on this, if it's pitted, rusted, all bent up, yeah, man. So just being more self-sufficient, more or less, is what the
Yeah.
machine's bringing,
That's
along with
pretty
some
cool.
money.
Well, right, and then you're in control of the tolerance. You're in control of what it does, where it does it, and then how strong it is based on what you need. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, between me and Evan, mostly Evan, with he's usually the operator. He's got this shit figured out.
Yeah, yeah, he seemed pretty
What's the new
smart.
machine again?
What's that?
What's the new machine again?
It's like a knee mill or just a mill.
Okay.
Can cut, this way instead of a lathe.
Gotcha. Yeah,
And
that's pretty
for
sweet.
certain things we need it for, like I'm not doing it right now. I'm not making anybody any promises, but I am getting interested in the 6L80.
Mm,
I do see potential in it, and we definitely need this machine to cut the bell slash pump, which was a stupid design. But yeah, definitely essential for moving on, because someday the
mhm.
4L is going to be very old and not practical anymore and all
Yeah.
this.
Well, I mean, like you start thinking about just electronic side of stuff. Those things are going to be harder to get unless somebody's making them. 6L stuff it was out. Now it's I don't know if it's in cars anymore, but like there's millions of 6Ls that are out there. And my brother had a Pontiac G8 that had one, and I mean, it was a full bolt-on car cam and all that kind of stuff, and a good converter, and it acted right all the time. Like he beat on that car, and it took it, which is really cool. And they talk about how tough they are. So you do that,
Yeah,
and you have 6 gears instead of four.
yeah, and the more you go, from what I understand and what I've torn apart, and by no means I'm no expert in the 6L at all yet. I'm just learning it, but from what I've observed, they took like the best parts of the 60 and the best parts of the 80 and put them together.
Nice.
Things made out of good aluminum. It has a 60 type pump, which I do like more than the 80. I know I'll get shit for that, but I don't like gear pumps. They're limited. You got to do so much to make them work right. That's the 80s real fall suit and a lot of the Fords. You got to TIG weld like one drum, remove some wave plates that shatter, and otherwise just tune it, and they can hold like 1,000 horsepower with pretty much a simple tune. So
That's
that's
awesome.
good. Yeah, a good converter, some pump work, and a real good tune, and like one Sonex PR valve, from what I understand, will build you pretty solid 6L 9080.
That's pretty cool. So like, as a builder, you're not replacing everything inside to handle, I would say 95% of the cars and trucks that are, hot rods that are out there. You can do that pretty inexpensively, it almost sounds like.
Yeah, a lot of it on like so the 4L has its weak points, and a lot of it is the metal and hydraulics. Every transmission from the factory has the shittiest hydraulics. Like, I mean, down to the 204R. If you just put some 60 parts in it, the 204R becomes the best pump in the world.
Wow.
And that's technology like 20 years, 30 years later. It all fits right in. 700 boost valve and a 13 vein pump. You'll have a mean 204R pump. So the 80s that way too, because it's gear driven pumps. They're good for like oil, for an engine, but trying to pump 200 PSI consistently is pretty hard for it. Now there's things you can do naturally, but with the 6L, other than the pocketed bell housing idea they had, which I don't get yet, the 6L is a 60 pump, which the vane pumps can pump a lot of volume, a lot faster, a lot more efficiently. However, they're more prone to breakage. That's the downside. So a good flex plate, good spacing, and just make sure pretty much you're not misfiring or anything like that. But yeah, I want to learn about this one.
Yeah.
If I trailed off there, I apologize.
No. So Jack Weatherford, we were talking about earlier on the show, he sent me some photos here of him camping at Sick at the Rock. Sorry, I just saw it. My phone's been going off like crazy. But big shout out to Jack, who gave me unfiltered access all week at Sick Week. It was pretty cool. But that's a
Hell
stick
yeah.
shift car, so T56. That's not really kind of in your wheelhouse, but I'm sure you can appreciate manual transmissions as well. But let's
Well,
talk
nobody knows this, and I shouldn't say it, but I mean, honestly, the truck's the only automatic I own. All my other cars are stick. All three of them.
That's awesome. Well, if it's kind of like the mechanic always has the stuff that he doesn't really work on all the time.
No, I don't. Like, in that truck, that's just a lifelong project. Now that we bring that up, hold on. There's two things. Okay, we go to the truck. I want to go back to this. Just
Yeah.
the Gen 4 and 5 on the 6L is the same torque-based shit. It just gets a little more complicated. That's all. Now that
Interesting.
I've said that, the truck, I've now decided, I got inspiration from, I forget their names. It was the Camaro and the Oldsmobile with the inline 6 Trailblazer engines.
Oh, wow. Atlas
American-
4200.
Yeah, Jay
Yeah, the
Witt.
American Supras. Yeah.
Yeah, Jay, Jonathan Whitaker, and then Calvin Nelson.
Yes. I've checked out their channel. I love it. We yanked one. I want to rip the big block out of the truck now and put one of those in.
Yes.
We just finished it. We haven't even fucking drove it, and here we are going through a motor change.
Yep. Hey, that's the way it goes, man. The 4200 is pretty neat. It's really growing a bunch, and Jeremy Ortiz is putting one in a SN95 Mustang. No, is
New
it
Edge.
SN95? New Edge. Yeah. So yeah, I think that it's interesting enough because like your truck is what, a 51.3?
2.
52. It would have came with a 6-cylinder. So that's kind of neat, to be able to put a 6 back in it and then have one that'll actually handle a bunch of power, you know?
Yeah. So like it came with a 235 with the splasher
Mhm.
oiler system, real pitiful son of a bitch. And it just feels like it belongs. Like the big block
Yeah.
was cool, but I had to up the springs so much in the front and it
Yeah.
still weighs it down. Like it's like 800 pounds that you're just kind of teeting around with a little Motion Raceworks homemade steering column and tiny wheel. It doesn't feel good. So this makes sense. Lightweight, all aluminum, strong bottom end, great,
Yeah.
injector, airflow, everything. On a budget, which
Yeah.
that speaks my language.
Right.
Right.
And super available. And
Yes.
like Calvin, he just locks out the VVT on the early stuff he was doing, and then I think lately he's been using the VVT on them to to have like great drivability down low, and then obviously more power up top. I think they made like 1,000 on one on the stock bottom end, or 900 or something like that on one. So yeah, big fan
It's
of that.
it's a lot, and that's gonna be the next drag and drive motor. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, let's go. I'm
So
excited about that. And with drag
speak.
week coming right by the shop.
Yeah, I know. That's another thing. Shit. I'm sorry we're not getting to the 80. I'm getting there. But yeah, I really hope they do consider me for Hot Rod Drag Week. We
Yeah.
got the shop pretty spiffed up lately,
Yeah.
and
Somebody tag Mike Galimi.
and I have his magazine article right over there, right on
Right.
the wall.
Yeah. That would be a great reason for them to stop by us. They've already written an article about the shop in Hot Rod Magazine. So now it would be good for them to come by and, see it again with the updates.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of updates since, I promise. That was in 2016 he wrote that. So yeah, we're
Wow.
talking 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
Lots of
right.
stuff.
The moment we've all been waiting for, I guess. I'm going to tell you guys how to, I guess, build a 5 to 700 horsepower, maybe a little more if you're chancy, 4L80 for like $500 or less. Because
Let's go.
everybody's on a budget nowadays. Even if you don't want that power, this is just going to make your 4L80 better, no matter what. And it's very easy to do. One thing, you don't even have to drop the transmission. You can just do it right in the vehicle. And this is probably the biggest thing. So I brought home in my pocket, and my washing machine always sounds like World War II because I have this stuff on me. One of the things is the boost valve of a 4L80. Okay. Up here, we have a PR valve, and down here in my hand, we have a boost valve, right? These are cheap. They're not expensive parts. And all it takes is a big pair of snap ring pliers to remove it and the pan off. And a little finesse. You need a strong magnet. Sometimes they don't want to come out. That's your job. Figure it out. But normally they just slide. So when I told you earlier about the 4L's pump being pathetic because it's gear driven, along with most transmissions, the biggest mod you can do is take that boost valve out and get yourself a big pressure spring for the 4L80 or Turbo 400, either one. Okay, just one. That's all you need. And these things are like $5. Just throw that in there. Put it right in place of the much tinier stock spring, new spring, twice the size.
Wow.
Okay, so what that's going to do, it might make if you're looking for comfort, don't do this. I'm talking daily driver. If you just want a little rowdiness or you're, drag racing or whatever, this is the mod for you. This will take your pressure from the pitiful, like 60 to maybe like 140, all the way up to like 110 to like 220 easily on damn near every 80. That is probably the biggest thing you can do because that's where the 80 suffers the most is the gear driven pump. The other place it suffers is the bushings and gear train. But if you have a really good 80, chances are you don't got to worry about that. It's just around the 300,000 mile mark. If you're junkyarding it, those Teflon seals are going to eat into your drums. It's a guarantee. It's not if, but when. As long as that's good, That's why I say install the PSI gauge. You hit first, it's great. You hit second, you have like a 30-pound drop, something's happening. You might want to stop. It's going to get expensive if you keep going.
Interesting. So
yeah,
on the old truck, I made sure that I had a trans temp gauge, right? That's one thing I figured I needed all the time. But I had not thought about a pressure gauge, so maybe we'll put one of those in.
yeah, and in your instance is a very relatable topic. So when we're talking boost valve pressure, your engine's trying to correlate that through milliamps to the transmission and all this shit's going on. Meanwhile, Michael has the pump gasket, which is supposed to go between the case and the pump. He has it in between the pump halves.
Yeah.
And therefore
that was fun.
Yeah, real fun. Nobody would have guessed that shit. The whole middle of the pump's open.
Dude, it really surprises me it even drove.
I'm shocked.
I drove it like that for 1,500 miles.
That is, someone's watching over you. Straight up. But if you had a gauge in there, your shit would have been fluttering like Flappy Bird, like all the time.
Because like the only way it could have built the required amount of pressure was just simply having too much fluid in there, right? I mean, like
Pretty
at some
much.
point, oh man, yeah, I'm surprised it was even working. But yeah,
fluids. I was going to say, fluid's a magical creature. I mean, that thing could be working and flowing in just the right way to where it's not hurting any other thing too bad, and it could just kind of work. That's why I'm kind of bringing up the 80 on a budget, because the 60, it's very light duty, parts can break. It's very hard to build. You have to time everything right. You have to tune it right. A lot of it is the builder. A lot of it is the tuner. It's really a shared effort. The 80, it is really hard to mess up. It is a strong tranny. It can take it. And just by doing really a boost valve, you have made it twice as good. The other side to this, the other mod that you can do for a lot of power, when we're getting into boost and everything, or even big NA guys, big trucks, things that tow, tractor pulls, shit like this. Dual feed. It's a very popular topic. Very commonly known topic. Sloppy Mechanics kind of was the one that did it first. Where way back in the day, I learned a lot from that group. But essentially what you're doing is GM never utilized the whole surface of the direct and forward drum. They only use half the piston, which in hydraulics and transmission, that's bad. We want to use the whole thing because more surface area is more holding power. So we want to double that. Essentially what you do is take parts out of the transmission to make it work better. You take both drums apart, and the third direct drum, we call third direct. That's just lingo. You would remove the center seal completely after you take the piston out. Just leave it out, put the shit back in, and do your clearance. Everything's good. The next one, the forward drum, which is first, that seal is molded in the drum. You would cut 4 notches or cut the whole thing out if you'd like. It doesn't matter. I do 4 notches. That will let the fluid bleed instead of, I don't know why they sealed off that center, but they did. Now, you've created a problem. Now we got to fix the problem. Okay, you've created a lot of leakage, a lot of area. We fix the problem by going into the case, and this is where I wish I was at the shop. But if you look at a 4L80 case straight on, where the valve body vane side is, okay, like you're looking at the belly laying under the vehicle, you're going to see 3 holes, one with a bolt in the middle with a hole in it where the center support is. Turbo 400 has the same thing. Turbo 400 has a center support as well. So a lot of guys will know what I'm talking about. The bolt with the hole through it at where about my nose is across the case there, the bolt with the hole in it, that feeds the intermediate clutch, which is second gear. It also releases that oil. There's 2 holes on either side of it. Those are for the third clutch. Now, we don't want to flow in one port and out the other. So basically all we're doing is balancing the oil here, where we'll plug the right side of that hole set. So we plug the right hole. All we're doing is creating a feed that's just one way, and it can't possibly fuck the timing up or anything like that. And then on the center support itself, to help with that, you would leave off the second ring down entirely. Just leave it bare. If you're feeling crafty, get on a lathe, machine that ledge off, but it's not necessary. And that is how you double the strength of your first gear, your third gear, and the other gears in the corresponding combos they work with. Along with your boost valve, which increases the pressure, you multiply that by your surface area that you've just doubled. Well, you've probably more than quadrupled the strength of your already strong stock 480.
Man, that's cool.
And that is how it works.
It's pretty interesting that, like, as engineers of GM stuff, why would they not have done some of that stuff in the beginning? You know what I mean? Like, and how many of those tear up before folks like you figure this stuff out? You know,
I think a lot of it is for comfort and cost effectiveness. So cost effective in this case doesn't make sense because they don't have to spend money on those seals, even if they're worth a penny. However, when you double the surface area of something, you are going to make it apply harder, even if you keep the same pressure, because there's more area pushing against and colliding with something. So even though it definitely wouldn't bother you guys or most other street racers at all, you guys would probably love it and be like, oh, it's like a Cadillac. You know, 85-year-old granny or whatever is not going to like it so much.
Because that's, I mean, essentially you're creating like a shift kit, right? Where it's like, it's a faster, harder shift.
Essentially, yes. I like to view the whole build as a shift kit, essentially, even though a shift kit mostly, and it's defined as basically holes in a valve body plate and a couple springs in a valve body. But a real shift kit, in my opinion, is all those variables considered with what you're doing in the valve body. Because if you have I don't know, we'll go back to the 60 for a second, because that one's a little easier to talk about. You have a band and a third clutch. Both those make fourth. One makes second, one makes third also. And they have to work together. If you don't do your shift kit right with everything else, then they're going to be off time regardless of the tune. And when they can't work together, guess what classically happens? You lose third and fourth, and seconds hurt too, usually.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's where that's why everybody hates the 60.
It is. It's such a touchy little creature, but boy, when it works, it is nothing unlike anything else.
Well, and it's a much better first gear. You know,
It
especially
is.
for like a car with 350 horsepower that you're just cruising around town, and you're really like you've built a cruiser. You know, so it sounds good. It needs to do some burnouts when you leave a stoplight. You know, things like that. Like a 60 is much better for that than an 80.
It is, yeah. For the guy just not trying to spend crazy money like I build, like that is kind of how it is. The 60 is good for light duty, 80 is good for heavy duty. 80 is easier to build than the 60. Sure, the 80, your 0 to 30 is going to suck, but you can do ratios to compensate that.
But again, then you're spending money. You're buying parts. You're doing all the others. You're building a transmission.
Yeah, and on top of that, 80 swaps can get pricey, but they can be cheap. It's such a toss-up because I just see the budget building thing kind of vanishing. Things are getting a little pricier, harder to find. When you get into like stuff like we're doing, the 60 does kind of have a limitation over the 80 in the ratios. When we're putting it through 1500 wheel, like with Matt's car in the 8-second, 834, we had so much trouble with the 1-2 and 2-3, just getting it to shift because it was just skipping over the tables. The car was too fast for what the ratios were. So we were pulling timing, this and that. Eventually, we just programmed in a second gear start Started at a 155 ratio, which is basically a power glide ratio. Then we're gonna try it like that. That is gonna be the real ticket. And I've had a guy in New York, Pat Maloney. He did it. He pretty much did 850 on the street, but he blew up his motor at the same time.
Wow. Man, that's interesting.
Second gear starts are good in the 4 speeds. They can be done, but you are going to take off.
Right. So then are you shifting 2, 3, 4 on the track, or are you just using 2, 3?
No, we're just using 2, 3. So we're doing it a couple different ways. Mats we're going to do through tuning, which I think is a little safer. Pat, with what I do to the 4L60s, which I can't get into, our trans brake will work in every gear, unfortunately. So I just had Pat put it in D2. And he naturally, you have to upshift real quick to D3, but he was able to pull that off.
That's pretty cool. Well, let's talk about leaving it like in D versus a manual valve body. Like, are you use my truck as an example? Truck makes 550, built to cruise around on the street. I'm going to go to the track 10 times a year, maybe probably more like 5.
I think it depends on what kind of person you are and what you're looking for as well. 10 times a year, if it were me, I'd do the full manual thing. I like a little more rough rowdiness. A full manual is going to be constant pressure, which means you are going to experience wide open throttle shift pressures all the time, even if you got your big toe on the gas. And you are going to have to shift it all the time. And there's a danger of you forgetting and bogging down your motor and, stalling it or whatever. The other route, I really embrace the tuning because you can still shift it and actually lock out certain gears with certain mile and hours. So you could have the best of both worlds with 2 tunes saved on most of the electronic stuff. If I were like a Turbo 400, though, full manual, reverse pattern, trans brake all day, no question. A lot of the older stuff, like the governors for auto shift, doesn't work with boost at all. Doesn't like it. Doesn't like the turbo lag. Won't shift right. Good luck. Electronically, much easier.
Yeah. And I think that's, as we look at things in the last 10 years, let's say, right? The electronics and the understanding of how that stuff has worked and does work, and like Terminator X Max kits and things like that, that really help with making cars much more streetable when they're not on the ragged edge, making a pass or something like that. You can actually like have a regular cruise around car, and then when you get into it, now it understands, hey, no, I need to shift harder, I need to stay in a gear longer, all that kind of stuff.
It is. And most standalones, which again, I just recommend everybody get one if you can. Just do it. Bite the bullet. Because you can save multiple tunes half the time. It makes tuning it so much. It takes all the hard stuff that you don't want to worry about out of it.
Yeah.
And if you do got to diagnose a problem, you're looking at my throttle position's messing up or my output speed's messing up, basically. Which one? True or false?
Right. Interesting.
The other thing is just like that, you are able to save a full manual tune on some of these things. You could max out your mile an hour to 255 through all 4 gears and basically have a forward pattern in a very primitive way. There is a little bit more to that, but that's essentially how you do it. Or, like I said, going home from the track, flip it on tune 1 and put it in D and just
cruise.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. But if you had something old school nowadays with modern power plants, the auto shift's gone, full manual all day. It just has to be.
Yeah, see, the old truck is built more street friendly, and I just want to column shift that thing to to D or 3 and just cruise around. You know what I mean? Like if I'm going to do some big broly burnouts, I'll pull it down into third gear so it doesn't shift into overdrive.
Yeah. And if somebody out there like does know, one of you old heads does know to make a governor work with the turbo at pretty decent power, let me know because I don't. And
Yeah.
to my knowledge, it just can't. So correct me if I'm wrong.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've ground weights on different. The hardest one was a 513 ratio on a rear gear. They don't like that. Switching from a mechanical to electronic, in my personal experience, with no other changes, has changed the feeling in general with just how it felt. That's why I'm really after it, and why I think the 6L is going to be kind of the next big thing. When you really get into that, you have so much to play with at your fingertips on a computer, and what it can do. It's unreal. And I don't think we've barely cracked the 4 speeds. I mean, there's so few people that actually understand them. It's going to be a while for the 6, but some of these tuners are figuring it out.
Well, like you said, with a few things, it'll hold 1,000, and that's 95% of the street cars.
Yeah, and the
Make
only real
less than 1,000
downfall,
horsepower.
the only downfall of the thing is it's just big. It's just hard to fit and shit, just like the 80.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
except it's 2 more gears that are the same size. You know,
yeah,
like it's got a big body on the 6L80s and 90s, and, putting that in a car that had a 3-speed manual, means you're probably gonna put a trans tunnel in it.
yeah, and this year's been wild. I've done some real crazy shit. We have a 60 and a V10 Viper right now. I don't know how
Interesting.
I don't know how, but he did. Now the motor's coming out. He's going to a stroker crank. He's going to make more, well over 1,000. But so far, we've done some crazy cars like that. We've done an F1 style GTO this year. I'm still waiting on pictures of that, but it sounded pretty interesting. Couple
Interesting.
things.
That's why the 60 behind the Viper setup?
I never did ask the guy. He has one behind a Mercedes as well, a C class. That's all done up, but I guess it works well, and I really think between the 4L60 and the 6L90, those two things are going to be so popular in the next 10 years just because of how the ratios are. I think they're both just perfect for that.
Well, and that's a perfect way to segue into Jay's question, because like the 10L stuff, the 10-speed stuff is working so well on like the Coyote F-150s and Mustangs and stuff, because there's so many gears. You don't have that, big RPM drop as it shifts a gear. So he says, how about 10Ls? There are a couple third-party companies that are doing controllers that interface with Holley EFI.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about the 10L yet at all. But it's like what I explained, I think, in like a couple episodes ago. It started with the Power Glide. We start with 2 gears and we move on to 3, and then we take that 3 and we move on to 4, then we move on to lockup. Well, I think people really, when the 6L came out, tuning really started being paid attention to. And I think people have learned so much from the 6L80 that it's just made the 8L and the 10L much easier to manipulate. And they are built well. Like you said, the Mustangs, I know they're smashing it out there. I think these guys, it's going to come down to a tune basically eventually for a good transmission.
And getting it to live and stay, because I would think like as your clutches become worn, as your shift pressure begins to lessen, as time goes on. I mean, I would imagine that things just have more space. O-rings don't O-ring as much now, like as you get a couple 100,000 miles, and your pressure isn't there, so you start losing some pressure, and then a lot of times you get that back and it's fine. But like these 10Ls, dude, 10-speed automatics, that blows my mind.
So the way, so going back to like 400s and shit, you know, just the tranny. That's all we have. And if you're slipping clutches, you're just overpowering it, or you have a transmission problem. You get into the 6, 8, 10. You have a lot of variables that could cause a problem. However, you have a lot more. You can do pressure modifiers, whereas like the Gen 3 has like basically one pressure modifier table. You get into a 10L or 6L, it's got quite a few. And if you actually know how to, if you're good enough, which I'm not, to manipulate those numbers, you know, the right way, with that many gears, it's quite endless. With how much you could prolong a clutch. I've watched Richard Nelson two quarts of fluid out of a unit before. I mean, and that's on a 4-speed. So who knows, man? We have a lot to learn.
Yeah, and I think we're in a time now where people are willing to spend money on engineering and R&D because they know people are going to buy that stuff. They know they're going to upgrade. They know they're going to, spend money on car parts because cars are cool again. People want performance modifications. People want performance cars. They want to go drag racing. They want, that car they couldn't get in high school, but they want to also be able to cruise it, to the cruise night and Sonic and take their wives and girlfriends wherever they want to be able to drive these things across the country, and they have the money to be able to do it now, which I don't think that was the case 20 years ago. That 20 years ago, a 500 horsepower car was a bunch. You were king shit around wherever you were at. Now 500, I mean, there's production cars with 500 horsepower, there's production cars with 450 that will idle in traffic for 8 hours, so
There's Kias that can keep it. The baddest car is the Nissan Altima. That's a bad son of a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, they'll get down for sure. All right, well, let's wrap this up. Tell everybody where they can find you, what's coming up next on the channel, what you guys are doing in the shop right now.
You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and we have a Rumble too. At just type in @Performabuilt and you will see it. Coming up, I do have a lot of backlog, man. Editing is hard. Eric, didn't you learn that Adobe recently, haven't you? Yeah. So
Yeah.
When you do a lot of clips and you get the razor blade out, it really hurts your eyes.
It does.
But I do have some things I am going to release. I'm trying not to talk about the 4L60 so damn much this year. I'm trying to just do more, show some more things off, talk more about the 80 and the 400 because we've been neglecting those.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Coming up, we're trying to actively post, check in on us. And if you got a question, man, give us a call. If I got time, I'll try to help you out.
Yeah, I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge, dude, and I appreciate the opportunities. I mean, you and I have talked a bunch about stuff for the old truck. The plan right now is to get it through this winter or this summer of driving it, and then send it to you. And I've really been leaning on a trans brake just simply because I want it to do big, gnarlier burnouts. 1199 in the quarter mile and an 1100-foot burnout is my goal for by the end of the year. So we're going to see if we can make that happen. And I think once we figure out how to get there with that, then it's the next step without a cage. That's I don't want to put a cage in the old truck. So we'll see. I don't know. Maybe we take that level to where it's at, and then I put a 60 and a stock 5.3 in it, and we put that in something else and go fast.
I will build you a 60 to outdo any 80. I got you, Michael.
Yeah, see the budget minded thing. That's what I love, man. That's why I think this conversation tonight is going to be great. I think people are going to learn a ton of stuff, and I appreciate you giving out those tidbits for 80 stuff, man. Because like I was in the junkyard the other day. There's literally a 4L80 laying on the ground next to a truck. Like somebody had pulled the motor and just unbolted the 4L80 and set it there. Like they're out
honestly there. That's great advice. The best thing you kind of could do, because since the hard parts are heavy and they do wear in the middle, just if you got 2 cores, buy 2 cores because you're probably going to swap some stuff.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. All right, dude. Thank you so much. Hang tight with us. I want to talk to you after we end the show, and then
yeah. I found a birthday candle. I'm going to light it for Eric at the backstage.
Yes.
Perfect.
All right.
All right. And hey, listen, I appreciate you guys hanging out. Tonight's been awesome.
Yeah.
Ryan is so smart. It's got to be hard for him to dumb that stuff down for me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And but I really do appreciate him coming on. I appreciate Chuck coming on, spending the time with us. You know, we do this after hours, so a lot of times, you know, everybody's at home and they're trying to get their regular life going for that. So we appreciate everybody being out here. And dude, you want to send us out?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everybody that tuned in. Lots of comments tonight, lots of viewers. So appreciate everybody. You guys are our race car friends. We appreciate you. And of course, all of our sponsors, Summit Racing Equipment, Deechworks, Molly Motorsports, Driven Racing Oil, Howard's Cams, J-Wire Solutions, WAF Racing, Performer Built Transmissions, Car Chains 3D, PowerTube TV, Sweet Patina, and Racing Junk. And we will see you guys on Saturday morning for the news show.
Yep. See you guys.